Hello, it's fantastic you could join us for another episode of InFocus Recouched. I'm Ken Kingston.
And I'm Dora Amamuya. Today, we've put together a great series of highlights from the Record in Focus program, including an interview with the head of the Bible Society in Lebanon.
Wow.
Some great tips on dealing with depression, and a chat with US gospel musician Neville Peter.
It is going to be great. But first up, check out this segment with Danielle Sinnott and Trafford Fisher that is titled Gender Benders.
Now today we're talking about an interesting topic called gender neutrality.
Yeah, it's a growing trend, a growing area of interest, growing topic. Not sure where it's all going to go, Danielle.
Not sure where it's all going to go.
No.
So give us a bit of an overview for those who don't know what that is.
Basically, it's a trend, a social trend, maybe somewhat politically driven in some places, but a trend to try and take out any gender stereotyping. So in other words, we're going to neutralise gender and say that while there might be biological difference, obviously you can't argue about that, we're going to take out social behaviours that seem to specifically say this is boy behaviour, this is girl behaviour, this is boy dress, girl dress. It's neutralising the gender.
So give us some examples of that.
Well, in schools, it's starting to emerge a bit more where they're not specifying specific boys' play area or girls' play area in the toys. They try to neutralise those, so there'll be no kind of, well, this is boys' toys, this is everybody's toys. In sport, they're trying to take out any specific sport. So, and I mean, girls playing football, rugby, and that's been around for a while, but they're just really trying to make sure that there's no specific or specified sports for each gender.
So, Trafford, you could look at that and just say, well, you know, we're all different. Some girls like to play with trucks, some boys like to play with dolls. Is there an issue with that? At what point does that become a concern?
Yeah, it's so individual, isn't it? And personality, parents have a say in this. It's a complex issue. I think it's going out on the extremes where we're going to get into trouble. In Sweden, I know they in some schools I know they're promoting the idea that we don't use her or him. They have a word hen, which in Australia could be a bit tricky. Hen. It means
and a female.
It means neutral. Again, for gender. So they're trying to introduce that. They're also got gender-neutral bathrooms. So they're trying
everyone in together.
Yeah, they're just trying to use that as well to try. And the whole thing, I think, is to say, look, let's gender behaviours and dress. It's all social. Let's neutralise that and see. To me, personally, it sounds a bit experimental, and I'm really not sure where it's going to go. But I think we're at risk when we go the extremes. Two ladies, two sisters, Emma and Abby Moore, I think they've started Pink Stinks, which is a website to work specifically at doing this. And they recently went into a major clothing company and said, hey, this top that you've designed for girls, it uses the word bra top, that should be eliminated because that shouldn't be there. They've gone to major clothing companies and made significant moves to eliminate, and some of the shops have responded accordingly.
That's very extreme,
so it's a real push, a real move, and I think their concern is to limit girls' ambitions. Now, I support that. I think we should encourage and empower girls. The whole gender thing, I think we're in an experiment, and I'm not sure where it's going to go. We'll watch with interest.
Whoa, I kind of get where they're coming from with all these changes, but seriously, shared toilets and no words for him and her.
Yeah, it's kind of radical, isn't it? And I guess, like Trafford said, it's experimental with kids, though, as the guinea pigs.
Yeah, it's so scary. Well, let's change tack a bit now and go to an interview that James Standish did with piano player and gospel singer Neville Peter.
He shared the stage with Gladys Knight, Natalie Cole, and B.B. Winans. He's a virtuoso piano player and an incredible vocalist. He's performed at the White House and New York's Carnegie Hall, and now he's sharing some little time with us here on InFocus. Thanks for being with us, Neville Peter.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
So you were born in St. Thomas, which is an island in the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Yes.
A beautiful place, incidentally. It must have been hard to leave, but you left there and you moved to Orlando, Florida. What are you doing there in Orlando?
Well, I like to refer to myself as a singing evangelist, and I live there and I use Orlando as a home base, and I travel around, and that's why I'm here.
Now, you weren't always a singing evangelist, were you?
No.
What were you doing prior to becoming a singing evangelist?
Well, I was working in secular music, R&B, soul, jazz, funk, all of that. And I used to play in a lot of the nightclubs down on the Miami Beach area.
Sure.
And then I, had an opportunity to work with Gladys Knight and tour with Cassandra Wilson, a jazz vocalist, and, things like that.
Wow. Now
BC, before Christ.
Right, okay. Now, working the nightclub scene in Miami, that's one of the hottest nightclub scenes in the whole of the United States. I mean, this is a really happening place. Was it hard for you to give that up?
Yeah, I would say that it was, but the more and more I came to know the Lord, the easier it became to give it up. I believe that when we catch new and fresh revelations of God, it makes it easier to turn your back on the world.
Sure. Now, let me ask you a question, because we see this over and over again, where people who come to Christ turn their back on the secular music world. Why is that necessary, or is it necessary?
I believe it's necessary because I came to the realization that God doesn't share. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Jesus himself said it, no man can serve two masters. It's like having heads and tails on the same side of the coin. It just doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? You either love one or you hate the other. That's what Jesus said. He doesn't share, man. He wants all. He wants it all, or else, it's not going to work. The relationship isn't going to be effective. Your light isn't going to shine as bright.
Okay. Well, so do you feel like it was necessary for you in your spiritual experience to make this change?
Definitely.
And do you feel like God has blessed you since making the change?
Oh, certainly, certainly. One of the greatest blessings is that I have a greater knowledge of Him, a greater experience with Him. I would say that when you come into relationship with Jesus Christ, He frees you from all kinds of things, and you can stand and walk in freedom, and others, like Jesus said, others can see your good works, and then they glorify God.
Glorify God through your music, which is a wonderful thing. Now, some of our viewers are going to notice that you're wearing dark sunglasses on the set. Why is that?
Well, I'm completely blind. I became blind at the age of 12. I was diagnosed with glaucoma when I was about 6 months old. And if any of you know about glaucoma, it's a very slow disease. So I had an opportunity to get used to not seeing, and I consider that to be a blessing, because some people just, lose their sight abruptly.
Right,
and it would have been harder to deal with that way, but gradually is better.
But still, it must have been very difficult for you, and I suppose your parents, to have this experience, this very devastating experience.
Yeah, I would say that it was probably a little bit more difficult for my parents because they knew what my future was going to be, as opposed to me. Didn't really know so much about what my future was going to be. I was more concerned about playing. I'll tell you a quick story. I used to have to wear these real thick glasses so I could see better. And I remember thinking, when I didn't need the glasses anymore because I was completely blind, I remember thinking, oh man, I'm so glad I don't have to wear those anymore.
Right.
So I mean, my outlook was a lot different.
It's a kid's perspective.
Yeah, it was a lot different.
Are you ever angry at God that you lost your eyesight?
No. I had my childhood wasn't the greatest, but it wasn't so much because I was blind. I think it was more so more because of when you struggle with disabilities, your friends a lot of times don't accept you. So it was more the social aspect of it that was a little bit more difficult than the actual physical blindness itself.
Now, Neville, I had a chance to hear you on the weekend, actually, at Wahroonga Seventh-day Adventist Church, and you were really remarkable. I think that we have a clip now that we're going to show to our viewers.
The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, much more than fine gold. Sweeter than the honey, yeah, yeah. Sweeter than the honey honeycomb.
Well, that was terrific. My wife and my children were there in the church, and my little girl, who's only 5, was just so excited. She was electrified to hear you glorifying God in that way. And now this is your second time to Australia, but you're giving some performances or concerts while you're here.
Yes.
Where are you singing next?
Well, next I'm going to be at the Northern New South Wales big camp, you guys call it here in Australia.
Right, that's right.
I'm going to be performing on the first weekend, that first Saturday evening.
Superb, and that's up at Stewart's Point, and I think a lot of our viewers who are going to be in the area will want to come along to the camp to hear you. But many of our viewers, obviously, are from all across the Pacific region, and we also have viewers in the U.S. and so forth.
Okay,
so
wonderful.
where can we hear your music if we can't make it to Stewart's Point this Saturday night?
Well, you could visit my website at nevillepeter.com. That's NEVILLEPETER.com.
Excellent. That's there right on your screen, viewers, if you want to visit it.
Yeah, and you can download the music off the website, or if you would prefer to have a hard copy CD, as soon as your order is taken, the CD will be shipped to you.
Well, thank you so much, Neville, for being with us and sharing your God-given talent and the story of your talent with us. It's been wonderful to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, great guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
And that little music clip there, man, jazzy, soulful. It was too short. I just wanted it to keep going.
I know, it was great, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
We're going to go to a quick ad break now, but we'll be right back.
We're going to start with some soybeans. Use some chickpeas, an onion, you have a teaspoon of salt, slice some tomatoes, slice some cucumber, some red onion just to give it a bit of freshness. So just make little falafels like this. They just smell amazing. Let's make our tahini dressing. Let's get in some tomatoes, cucumbers, some falafels. Drizzle some of this lovely dressing. All you need to do is roll it up and you've got a delicious lunch for your family.
Welcome back. We're going to go now to a segment we filmed a few years back with Daniel Sinnott and our very own living legend, Dr. James Wright.
Well, let's take a look then.
Now today, we're talking about
Depression.
depression.
Depression, a nasty topic. We're trying to sound cheery, but so many folk out there have depression, or a lot of folk have what they call bipolar disorder. Now, in the olden days, when I was a young doctor, it used to be called manic depressive syndrome, but that didn't sound very nice. They call it bipolar condition or bipolar disorder. Now, this means that a lot of people, 1 in 5, or 5% rather, of the population, they claim, have bipolar. For a while, everything's okay, then they start to get depressed, miserable, feel unhappy, then they start to get hungry, start to eat food to try and overcome their problems, and then they can't sleep at night, and they just become horrible, wrapped up in themselves. Life is a misery. And then all of a sudden, bit by bit, they start to feel better. They start feeling better and better without any medication at all. And they're on top of the world, and they can, walk a tightrope and everything's great. Then down they come again, bipolar disorder.
And often they'll do funny things, won't they? Like go on a shopping spree while they're high and
spend all their money
and then
all
get
these
them into a
crazy
depression
things.
again. Yeah.
Now, what is even more common is the component of depression. That is more common. And a lot of doctors and research, and the New England Journal of Medicine, which is the doctor's holy grail, it says that maybe up to 20% of us at some stage, including you, may have or may become depressed. Very, very nasty indeed.
And they say 1 in 4, I think, is a stat, isn't it? In their lifetime will suffer some form of depression.
Yeah, well, 20%, that's exactly what I said, yes.
You know, the stat I heard the other day was that by the year 2020, that depression will be the major illness around the world.
Oh, well, look, it's probably that already. A lot of folk have mild depression, don't know anything about it. But the key thing we're trying to say today is if you find yourself starting to get depressed and miserable for no good reason, or maybe there might be a good reason, some horrible thing has happened in your life or stress or whatever, please go and see your doctor. A lot of these things can be worked out through lifestyle modifications. That's fine. But if that doesn't sort of work, you have prayer and believe in God and all those sort of things. If you're still having problems, please see the doctor.
Or
Today
go to your website.
Go to my website, absolutely, docwright.com.au, or see the doctor. And we have all sorts of antidepressants available today, which are very good. Arab packs, there's a whole range of these, a whole family of these now, which give a lot of relief. They take about 6 weeks to sort of really get into the system and work.
And they can read about that on the website, and they can also go and have a look at some other links on your website to deal with depression.
You know, that was a bit of a worry for me there, Dora, what Danielle said, that depression is set to be the world's most common or widespread disease.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And do you think that maybe part of the problem is that people are just sitting around more, watching TV,
Binge watching.
Yeah, eating junk food. They're like totally disconnected from their family and friends.
Yeah, I think that'd have to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And also, I guess, when so many people have given up on the idea of God or any firm sense of, you know, right or wrong, then it's really easy to think, you know, what's the point of life? And, you know, it's all a bit meaningless.
Yeah, it could be. Well, on that positive note, we'll take a short break, back in a flash.
Signs of the Times, a Christian view of the world. And this month in Signs, 50 years after John Lennon's infamous quote, "Is Christianity waning?" Imagine a world where we don't waste time eating food. The real story behind the legend of St. Patrick, the portent of the 4 blood moons of recent years. All in this month's Signs of the Times. Subscribe to Signs today and change your life.
Onions add great sweetness and flavour and a good base to any curry. Going to add some ginger, some garlic. Look at that, nice and chunky. So we've got our spices, gives it kind of a Sri Lankan feel. Add some tomatoes, tomato paste, some honey. Roasted vegetables in these kind of dishes are always great. If we add some creaminess to it, and that dish is now finished, ready to hit the table. I'd recommend you to give it a try, and it's so easy.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Hi, welcome back. Now, Kent, the original InFocus program centred a lot on news and current affairs. We're not doing that so much anymore, but this next interview tells us why that was important.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dora. This interview was shot near the end of 2012 when the Syrian conflict had already been going on for about 18 months. And this was before anyone had even heard of ISIS. But still, the signs weren't looking good.
Let's take a look then.
I'm here today with Dr. Michael Bassous from the Bible Society in Lebanon. How are you, Michael?
I'm fine. Thank you, Kent, for hosting me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Your first time in Australia, I understand.
First time.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoy your stay. Now, something that is disturbing to us in Australia, Michael, is every night on the news lately we're seeing destruction and death in the Middle East. It's Israel and Palestine and Hamas, you know, lately, but underneath that there's this ongoing civil conflict. You're based in Beirut. In Lebanon, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like bordering a lot of those countries. What's the perspective on the ground for you?
Well, the Middle East has always had these conflicts, and it's a vicious circle. They go around. We recall a few years back, it was Iraqi refugees that we were catering for. Now it's Syrian refugees that we are catering for. 50, 60 years ago, it was Palestinian refugees. So this is a vicious circle that continues to go around. The Arab Spring now has even produced a new process of change, and that is also very turbulent and unsure of what the future holds.
Now, you mentioned Syrian refugees, pouring over the border into Lebanon. About 250,000, is that right?
The latest statistics I read today was 122,000 Syrian refugees. That's in Lebanon alone. Of course, there are another big group into Jordan and into Turkey. And so the government is trying to cater for them. Lots of NGOs, including the Bible Society, the one that I work for, we're trying to cater for their needs, looking at their physical needs, but at the same time trying to address some of their spiritual needs.
A story that really isn't making the mainstream media a lot, although it is coming through the Christian media, is some of these refugees being Christians. We've got whole Christian villages being cleaned out by rebel militants, and is this scare tactics, or is this actually what's happening to Christians in Syria?
Unfortunately, the marginalized are the first to be attacked. Or if you look at the situation in Iraq a few years back, we've noticed that Christians were displaced internally and then externally, and the number of Iraqi Christians have dropped to half what it used to be 10 years ago.
Right,
And it looks like some trends are happening the same in Syria, and we see that Christians are seeking refuge in other countries because they're afraid of the future, they worry, they look at what happened in Iraq and they say, well, maybe the same thing is going to happen to us, so let's get out while we can afford it, or while we can actually get out if it's safe enough. So these fears are genuine and we have to recognize them, and here's where the Christian worldview comes into play, and we have to be aware that there are Middle Eastern Christians. I think in Syria we have almost 2 million Christians living there. That's a large number to be simply gone through this change process that is taking place there.
Now, you're the Secretary General of Bible Society in Lebanon, Michael. How did you come to be involved in that sort of work?
It was about 13 years ago. I worked in the business sector first, and then 13 years ago I had a heavy burden to go back into the ministry. I was very involved as a young man with the church, went into business for 12 years and then came back into the ministry, and I find it very fortunate. I'm a lay person, and that gives me an opportunity to be able to relate to all churches at equal terms in the Middle East, and we have lots of churches in the Middle East, so that gives me an opportunity to be able to network with them all at an equal level.
Now, as we know, I mean, I think we were saying just before the interview, there are 3 times as many Lebanese people outside Lebanon than are in Lebanon. Now, you've got, what, several degrees, Dr. Mike, I presume you're a PhD. You could have very easily, surely, gone to live in another country, and yet you've chosen to be based in Beirut and stay working with the Bible Society there. What's your reasoning there?
Yeah, well, it's a strange reasoning, and I don't give myself credit for that. From the first degree that I got, and it was in the USA, I felt the urgency to go back to my country. And throughout the difficulties that the country has been through, I've always felt peace, that this is the place where God has planned for me and my family to spend our lives. And so rather than uproot ourselves and go somewhere else artificially, this is where we are supposed to be. And we should never feel that we are foreigners. This is our land. We've existed there for 2,000 years, and we want to stay there being witnesses for Christ.
That's right. There are people there still speaking Aramaic, the language of Jesus, aren't there? Right there in Lebanon. Yeah. Now, you're currently out there helping Syrian refugees, aren't you? Like providing practical help as well as Bibles. How's that working?
What we try to do is we don't hide our identity. We're a Bible society, so we're Bible advocates. We publish Bibles. So we go and we address families with a box that includes certain food items that will sustain them for 2 to 3 days. And inside the box, we try to provide some scriptures, relevant contextual scriptures, some portions, and to different age families. So we have a coloring book for the little children and their stories from the New Testament. So we provide that with crayons. And for the adults, it's a New Testament, pocket New Testament.
Our experience... How's it being received?
It's always been received because, first of all, we are not doing this under any disguise. We're saying we're the Bible Society and we're here to help. And we want you to know the reasons why we do what we do. And this is the reason. This is book inside this box. That's the reason that prompts us to be here. It's living the word rather than just distributing it.
Sure. Now, Michael, you're in Australia, and I imagine you've been in other Western countries previously talking about the situation for Christians in the Middle East. You're right there in the middle of, the Israel-Palestine conflict, the Syria conflict. You're an evangelical Christian, is that right?
Yes.
You're also from an Arab background?
Yes.
Now, from a sort of, I guess, a political perspective, that must sort of have you rubbing up against people with some very diverse views on the issue of how to achieve peace in the Middle East. What's your perspective?
Well, it's our hope and our prayers to achieve that peace. And as you can see now, what's happening in the news, again, there are shells being exchanged over Gaza border. The issue is that this is a conflict. What we're seeing now are the symptoms of the conflict, and it goes up every few months, and we hear about it in the news, and then there are talks of ceasefire, and then it dies, and then it comes back. No one is actually approaching the root causes of this problem, and that is to have a two-state solution and get this done with. And so we keep on postponing the inevitable. We have to come back to the basis and say there are two states there, we have to recognize this and continue with our lives. And so all what we're dealing with at the moment are the symptoms rather than the root causes.
So obviously, as you go around speaking to people, you'd like Christians in Australia to be a little more aware of the situation there. What can we as Christians in places like Australia, which is a very long way away from the Middle East, let's face it, what can we realistically do, to help?
Well, we can ask you to pray, and we can ask you to listen to Middle Eastern Christians, because they've been living there for the last 2,000 years and they know exactly the context. And third and foremost, you can help through supporting the work that we are doing in the Bible Society. And here we want to thank the Australian Bible Society for being the upfront supporters for the work that we are doing in Lebanon and Syria.
They're running an appeal
They're
right
running
now,
an appeal for projects in Lebanon and Syria, and we want to thank them and thank the donors who are donating and supporting for these projects.
Okay, and I guess there are more details about that on Australian Bible Society's website?
Yes.
Great. Well, that website's right there on your screen. Check it out. And thanks so much, Dr. Michael Bassus, for your time today.
Thank you, Kent.
Oh, a great guy, Dora, really committed. And it's interesting, though, to jump on the net and compare some of those statistics that Dr. Bassus gave in that interview and, with how things are today.
Yeah, much worse.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But Bible Society is still doing their part, which is really admirable, I'd say. And you can still make donations to the Lebanon branch through your National Bible Society, be it in Australia or NZ or wherever.
Yeah, it sounds like an awesome idea.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for hanging with us on the couch this week. Here's wishing you all the best. Until next time.
See you later, and God bless.